There really is no necessity to go on living. We think, it's part of our Western philosophy, that we think we have a drive to survive, that we must go on living. Because some big daddy said to us, you got to go on living, see? And you better make it or else. Well, I've already explained to you on this show that the fear of death is completely absurd. Because if you're dead, you've got nothing to worry about. So you'll be all right. So in the same way, you must not, I don't want to use that word, must not. Because I'm not trying to talk to you as an authority. I'm trying to talk to you as somebody who's opening your mind up, a helper, not a father figure. This thing here, this plant, I'm quite sure it doesn't say to itself, you ought to go on living. You've got an instinct to survive, which is something other than yourself and which you have to obey. See, I don't think of my own instincts as drives, which is the proper psychological term for them nowadays. I think of my instincts as myself. I don't say, excuse me, but I have an unfortunate desire to reproduce myself, and therefore I'm sexy, and would you please accommodate me? I don't say, excuse me, but I have to eat, and really it's absolutely necessary that I eat. I say, on the contrary, hooray! I am this desire to make love, and I am this desire to eat. It's not something else that pushes me around, it's me. Well, all right, but it doesn't have to go on. I don't feel so compelled that if it were to stop, well, if it were to stop, if I were to be killed, that would be another scene. That would be a different form of the dance. If I'm in pain, people say, don't scream, don't cry, because screaming or crying is a perfectly natural reaction to pain. When a baby is first born, they cut the umbilical cord and somebody smacks it on the bottom, and the baby, yeah! See? That's the first thing in the world. There is in Zen Buddhism a koan, which says that when the Buddha was born, he suddenly stood up and announced, above the heavens and below the heavens, I alone am the world-honored one. Well, everybody would say that was an extremely proud thing to say. So they give this to students of Buddhism as a problem. How could it be that the Buddha, as a little baby, was so proud as to make this pompous statement when he was born? And if you understand the problem correctly, you answer, see? Because that is the perfectly natural response to the painful event of being born into this world. But thereafter, we always say, baby, don't you cry. Shut up. We don't like to hear babies cry. Shut up. And therefore, we stamp out in human beings their natural release from the problem of pain. If you're in pain, cry. And if you can't do that, then pain is your problem. But if you can cry, and if you can let go in that way, pain is no problem. And if you get the shudders at death, the idea of death, the idea of not being here anymore, just get those shudders and dig them. Because the shuddering, isn't it curious? We sometimes say, you remember that song that said, I am not shivering cause I'm cold. I am not shivering cause I'm cold. I am not shivering cause I'm cold. I am just shivering with delight. You know, when we get the shivers of delight. So all these emotions that we have, the emotions of uptightness, dread, shivers, horrors, can be interpreted in other ways. but we interpret them in a negative way so long as we are under the sense that you absolutely must go on living. Now you see, living, like this plant, is something spontaneous. In Chinese, the word for nature is zhiran, which means that which happens of itself, not under any control of an outside boss. And they feel that all the world is happening so of itself. It's spontaneous. And so you stop this spontaneous flowering of nature cold if you tell it you must do it. It's like saying to someone, you must love me. Well, it's ridiculous. If I were to ask my wife, darling, do you really love me? And she says, I'm trying my best to do so. That's not the answer I want. I want her to say, I can't help loving you. I love you so much I could eat you. And that's what the plant feels in growing. It doesn't feel that it must grow. It's not under orders. It's not a military chain of command. It does this spontaneously. So that when you try to command the spontaneous process, you stop it. It's like saying to someone, now, be unself-conscious. You know, there's a belief in India that if you think of a monkey while you're taking medicine, the medicine won't work. So therefore, when you take your vitamins or next pills, try not to think of a monkey. See? That will completely tie up the spontaneous process, and it won't work. So all the things that we say to our children, like, well, you must have a bowel movement every day after breakfast. Try, darling, to go to sleep. Stop pouting. Take that look off your face. Oh, you're blushing. Make you feel guilty about blushing. See? All those things are attempts to say this one thing. Darling, little child, you are required to do what will be acceptable only if you do it voluntarily. And everybody on this account is completely mixed up, because we are trying to force genuine behavior. We all admire artists when we say they're unself-conscious. They seem so natural. They seem to dance or paint or talk or play the piano so effortlessly. Of course, a lot of work has gone into it. But if you are a great artist, your so-called periods of practice, when you sit for hours and study your technique on the piano, you will not do that effectively unless it is a pleasure for you. You have to come to the point where going over it again and again is a dance. One of my friends is a great Hindu musician who has the most extraordinary technique in playing an instrument called the sarod. It's like an extremely sophisticated Hindu guitar. His name is Ali Akbar Khan, and he's generally acknowledged to be the leading master of Northern Indian music. He told me once that the comprehension of music is in understanding one note. The meaning of that is he can sit for hours and hours working on this, but there really is only one note at a time. And he gets into that note and listens. He really listens. Gets into the sound. And it simply doesn't matter that it takes a long time, that he'll have to do this for many hours, because he's completely absorbed in listening to the sound he is now making. He's going with that vibration, as when you might chant, you see, like They do in yoga. You can keep that up for hours. Now what is it? See, this is the real secret of life. To be completely engaged with what you're doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize that this is play. In Hindu philosophy, the whole creation is regarded as the Vishnu Leela. That means the play of Vishnu. Leela means dance or play, and from it we get our word lilt. They also, in Hindu philosophy, call the world an illusion. And in Latin, the root of the word illusion is ludere, to play. Because all this going on, the swinging of the ball, the pattern in which the flower goes, is just to swing. And if you take it seriousand say, are you doing anything useful? Useful for what? Useful to go on. But if you take that attitude to going on becomes a drag. Survival becomes a sweat, and it's not worth it. And if you teach your children, and they'll imitate you, they'll treat survival as a sweat which they have to undergo, they have to keep going on, and they'll teach their children to do it, and the whole continuation of the human race will be a drag, which is in fact what it's become because of this attitude, and this is the reason why we've invented the atomic bomb and are preparing to commit suicide. Because we think we must happen. And to the degree that we think we must happen, we hate it. And are going to bring it to an end. And stop it. So I was about to say seriously, but I'm going to change my words and say sincerely suggest. You know, I'm not, in talking to you, I'm not preaching. I'm not actually serious, because I'm really with this rather than any kind of deep philosophy and so on. So I suggest to you sincerely. G.K. Chesterton once said that the angels fly because they take themselves lightly. How much more so then he, she who is Lord of the angels. Huh. The whole world is 3 for a penny, 3 for a pound, 'tis love that makes the world go round, or in the words of Dante. But my own wings were not for such a flight, except that, smiting through the mind of me, there came fulfillment in a flash of light, that my volition now and my desires were moved like wheel revolving evenly by love that moves the sun and starry fire.